Wake up in the grind, clock ticking, 20 minutes flat, freedom main-handed, knives built where the real.
Welcome back to another episode of the 20-Minute Freedom Project. This show is for those who want ownership, discipline, freedom, and to build a life that they've always wanted, when it is earned and not handed to them. I'm Josh Lopez, and today's episode is Conceive It, Believe It, Achieve It. Napoleon Hill said something profound almost 100 years ago. Whatever the mind of a man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. I want you to think about that and whether that you actually believe that or whether it just sounds good. Because there is a difference. There's a massive difference between a quote that makes you nod and a truth that changes the way you operate. When most men hear that line, they go, yeah, believe in yourself, manifest your dreams, stay positive. And then go right back on to the same patterns, same doubts, same half-committed approach to their own life. They hear the words, but it went in one ear and out the other. They never actually build the belief. So today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go deep on this. We're going to break it down that conceive, believe, achieve, and what it actually means. Most of the time, we see it as a motivational poster or a social media post. But are you going to use it as it was intended, as a real operational framework, and actually change how you show up every day? Freedom isn't found, it's built. And it starts with the belief you haven't fully committed yet. So with that in mind, let's get into it. In 1908, a steel magnate named Andrew Carnegie gave a young journalist a challenge. He said, go interview the most successful men in America. Find out what separates them from everybody else. Then you're going to compile it. Create a philosophy of success that any man can use. And he went out and spent 25 years doing that exact thing. He sat across from people like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, John D. Rockefeller, 500 of the most accomplished men in that era. And what he found after 25 years and 500 conversations was this. It wasn't talent. It wasn't resources. It wasn't who they knew or where they came from. It was the sequence inside their head. He called it conceive, believe, achieve. And he built 13 principles around that. But if you boil it all down, and I mean really strip it to the bone, it comes down to three things that every single one of those 500 men had in common. The first was a burning desire, the starting point of all achievement. It's not a preference, not a goal you put on a sticky note that you might feel good about, but a true obsession. A weak desire produces weak results. The intensity of the want determines the level of the commitment. So let me ask you something. The thing you say you want, do you want it like a preference? Or do you want it as bad as you need air? Because those things produce totally different outcomes. The second is faith. And I want you to hear Hill's definition of this. Because it's not what most people think. He didn't say hope. He didn't say optimism. He said faith. The difference between I think I can and I know I will. That's not semantics. That's the difference between a drifter and an operator. One is auditioning for the life he wants. The other has already decided he's going to go achieve it. And number three is persistence. Most people quit inches from success, not miles, not halfway, inches. The pain gets too heavy. The results come too slow. The doubt from their internal voice gets so loud and they completely stop. Those that win, they're not always the most talented. They're the ones who keep showing up long after excitement has faded, long after the applause has disappeared, long after everyone else has gone home. Desire, faith, persistence. That is the foundation. if you can conceive it clearly, believe it deeply, and persist until it turns real. And he called men who didn't live their lives as drifters, men blown around by other people's opinions, fear, inertia, living reactively instead of by design. Does that sound familiar? That's your drifter. And that man will never build anything that matters, not because he lacks any kind of ability, but because he never made the conscious decision to believe. Now, he'll give us the blueprint, but how does this actually work in real time? Tony Robbins wondered the exact same thing and spent 40 years watching it play out in other people's lives. And what he found changes how you approach every single day. Tony Robbins has a thing that is called success cycle. And when I first heard this and really took the time to dive deep down into it and understand what he was saying, it was like a light bulb went off. And here's how it works. Belief leads to potential, which leads to action, which produces results, which leads back to your belief. When you believe something is possible, I mean genuinely believe it, not just wish for it, you tap into your true potential. That potential drives your actions. Those actions produce the results. Those results reinforce your belief. And the cycle just continues to build. But the cycle also can run in reverse. Weak beliefs mean half-hearted action. Half-hearted action means weak results, or maybe no results. And those no or weak results mean weak belief. And now you're in downward spiral. You don't even know, and you don't even know it because it feels comfortable. Let me make this point that I think everyone should hear. Your nature is to only invest all your energy into what you believe will actually work. So when you unconsciously believe something is not going to happen, even if you say it out loud, you sabotage it. You go through the motions. You take the action but leave something back. And then you wonder why the results don't show up. You cannot outwork a belief that says you will not win. The good news, though, you can actually interrupt this cycle at any point. You don't have to wait for better results. You just start believing more. You change the belief first, which changes the action, which changes the result. That's the game. That's literally the whole game. Let's take this deeper, even still, into limiting beliefs. These are the beliefs you never consciously chose, but are running your entire life right now. Maybe you grew up hearing that people like you don't succeed. That belief is operating in the background, like a virus. Maybe you weren't told that you weren't smart enough, you weren't good enough, you didn't come from the right family. Those beliefs don't disappear when you turn 25. They go underground. You push them down. And then they show up as procrastination, as settling, as quitting, right before the breakthrough. Our beliefs are like unquestioned commands that tell us what is possible and what isn't. And most people are just following orders from a commanding officer they never elected and never examined. So the first move, before strategy, before tactics, before any kind of execution stuff, is to examine what you actually believe. Not what you say you believe, the belief you actually operate from. I'm sure you've all seen those clips of David Goggins, but here's something that people tend to miss. They watch the clips, they hear the intensity, they think this is just some extreme guy, the guy who runs 200 miles and does pull-ups until he breaks world records. But what he's actually saying, underneath all of it, is something that directly applies to everyone. Most of us don't truly believe in ourselves because we never actually tested ourselves. Think about that for a second. How can you believe in a version of yourself you've never had to be? How can you have faith in the capacity that you have when you've never pushed yourself anywhere near your actual limits? Goggins says you are in danger of living a life so comfortable and soft that you will die without ever knowing who you were actually able to become. He has a concept called the 40% rule. He says when your mind tells you you're done, when it says you've hit the wall and you've given everything, there's nothing left. You're only at 40% of your actual capacity. The other 60% is still there, but your brain, designed to protect you and designed to keep you comfortable and safe, has sent the signal to stop. And most people listen to that signal. The belief ceiling that most people live under isn't real. It was built from a life of never requiring them to find out what was actually on the other side. Before you can build real belief, not surface confidence, not fake it until you make it energy, you have to stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself the truth, not the comfortable story and the woe is me, the actual truth, where you are versus where you say you want to be, what you're doing versus what you're capable of, what you're accepting versus what you should never accept. The drifter avoids that mirror. The operator stands in front of it, owns what he sees, and gets to work. Here's something that surprised me when I dug into Goggins' story. This man, who is arguably the hardest human being alive, traces one of his biggest mindset shifts back to a single moment of deciding to believe differently about himself. He realized he had been running negative self-talk as default programming, telling himself he was weak, that he couldn't do that he wasn't built for it. And when he made the shift, when he started speaking to himself like a man who was going to figure it out, everything changed. He didn't get new talent. He didn't get a new body. He got a new belief. And then he went out and built the proof. That's the sequence. Belief first, build proof second. Belief deepens third. You don't wait for the evidence. You go out and create it. I know some of you really need proof. You want the data before you commit. You want to know this isn't just self-help fluff. So let me give you the science. In 1977, a psychologist at Stanford named Albert Bandura introduced a concept called self-efficacy. It's a technical term, but here's what it actually means. Self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to succeed at a specific task and is the single biggest predictor of whether you take action, persist through obstacles, and ultimately achieve your goal. Not intelligence, not talent, not resources, belief. Decades of research across thousands of studies across every domain. Athletics, business, academics, health. The same thing keeps showing up. Men with high self-efficacy approach hard situations expecting to find a way through. Men with low self-efficacy see the same situation as a threat and look for an exit. It's the same circumstance with a different result, different viewpoint, completely different responses. The only variable is what they believe about themselves going in. The most powerful way to build self-efficacy is master experience. That's a fancy way of saying, go do hard shit and win. Every time you take on a challenge and push through, your brain rewires. It updates its files and says, you're capable of this. And the next challenge gets approached from the same foundation. That's why starting matters more than being ready. The evidence doesn't come before the action. It comes after. When you achieve something, your brain releases dopamine. That dopamine reinforces the belief that you're capable. That belief drives the next action. And the cycle Robbins described isn't just psychological theory. It's literally your brain's reward architecture. It is running in your nervous system right now. The question is, What inputs are you feeding it? Bandura said it simply. Unless a man believes he can produce the result he wants through his actions, he has little incentive to act. Belief precedes action. Napoleon Hill said, conceive and believe. Bandura proved why that actually works at the level of your brain's wiring. The blueprint is 90 years old, and the science confirms it. Now the question becomes, what do you actually do with it? I'm not going to leave you with inspiration and no execution. That's not what we do here. So here's a 3-step framework, simple, concrete, something you can actually move on this week. Step 1, conceive it clearly, not vague, not general, specific. I want to be successful is not concrete enough. It's a wish. I want to build a business generating $10,000 a month by December so I can be present for my family. That's a complete aspirational thing that you can actually accomplish. And it's something that your mind can work with. Hill said, write it down, read it aloud morning and night until you see it as already real. This week, write it down, one goal, specific, with a deadline, and read it every single morning before you check your phone. Step 2, build belief through action, not through thought. You cannot think your way into believing you can do something. You act your way in. Pick one hard thing this week, one thing that you've been putting off, one thing you've been approaching with half energy, and go at it with everything. Not because it's going to change everything overnight, but because every execution is a deposit into your belief account. Every time you do a hard thing, you build evidence. And that evidence becomes the foundation of the next level of belief. Start before you're ready. That's the only time you actually start. Step 3 is protect the cycle. Everything you just heard about how belief drives action, which drives results. That cycle needs clean fuel. If what you're consuming every day is negative, small, and fearful, your belief system will follow. This is about standards. Standards for your inputs, for your environment, for your conversations you allow, for the people you keep close. Where focus goes, energy flows. What you feed your mind becomes what you believe in is actually possible. And what you believe is possible determines everything else. Audit your inputs this week. One thing in, one thing out. Replace low-value habits with something that builds your belief into the direction you said you wanted to go. 3 steps. Conceive it clearly. Act your way into belief. Protect the cycle. That's the framework. Now it's on you. Napoleon Hill figured it out from sitting across from 500 other accomplished men. Tony Robbins spent 40 years watching the cycle play out in real people's lives across every background and every level of success. David Goggins proved it in the hardest way a man can prove anything, through his body and his mind in conditions most people will never experience. And Stanford proved it at the level of neuroscience. Belief is not the reward at the end of the journey. Belief is the price of admission. You don't achieve and then believe. You believe, and then you do what it takes to make it real. Most people are waiting for proof before they commit. They want the scoreboard to say they're winning before they give everything they got. And that's exactly why you are stuck. Because the scoreboard does not move until you bet on yourself first. The blueprint has existed for 90 years. The science backed it. The hardest men have proved it. The only question left is whether you're going to conceive it, believe it, and actually do the work to achieve it. Or keep waiting for proof that was never going to come before the action. That's on you. Not your circumstances, not your past. Not what anyone said you were or weren't capable of. It is all on you. If you're serious about moving from drifter to operator, and you want the accountability, structure, to actually execute on what we talked about today, I have something you might be interested in. 30 days, real accountability, real standards, real results. Send me a DM on Instagram. Standards over feelings. Ownership creates momentum. Freedom isn't found, it's built. And if this episode made you stop and strive to conceive, believe, and achieve a better life, share it out, so you and those around you can build greater lives. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and I'll catch you on the next one.